Wow, there's a lot of people here. What's going on today, everybody? Are you ready to have some fun? Are you ready to learn something new? Are you ready to really make the most of your day? If the answer to those questions is yes, then you've come to the wrong place. What you're going to get today instead is boring, not so exciting, and I wouldn't even believe what they say, continuing education with some moron. This guy is really real. He thinks he's a tax lawyer. He'll make your head spin. Woo, 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 woo. Hey, stop it or I'm calling the puppet authorities. Stop doing that. Anyway, he'll make your brows go up and he'll make you look back and forth and your mouth will be out of sync. So I would definitely not recommend this program or EstateView software. But if you do want to learn about how the numbers work for a married couple, the first thing you'll have to do, and this is the hard part, you'll have to stay married. Close the cabinets, buy a lot of gifts, and remember to apologize every hour. Just set your watch, apologize every hour, compliment every half hour, buy lots of gifts, and spend a lot of time with your counselor. Okay, well, this has been the best part of the presentation. Now the regular part of the presentation will begin, and there will be no polling questions. There will be no authorities checking to see whether you actually attended this presentation, but we will start on time and we will finish on time, and it will seem longer than that. Thank you, and Alan, we're ready. Okay, bye. Thank you for that stunning introduction, and I hope that everyone is already enjoying this presentation. I'm Alan Gassman. I'm going to share my screen because I like to share, and you should hopefully be seeing a PowerPoint right now. Let me just make sure you are. Yes, you are. And there's the puppet, and there's me, and you can tell that the puppet is operating me. In any event, we're going to spend 2 hours today running numbers for married couples relating to estate planning and estate tax planning. And what you can do is open your browser. That's if you have Google Chrome, for example, that's the top box not where you would normally put a search in the middle, but the browser. And in the browser, put in estateview.link. I can show you what it looks like if I can move my slides over. So I'm going to open my computer here, put it there, and then I'm going to put up there estateview.link, EstateView.link. And then because I've used it before and it knows me and likes me, it opens right up. If you've not used it before, then you'll see a blue button to click. That makes it more difficult. And then you'll be seeing what you see here. And then you can follow along with this, or later you can watch the video and pause it if you want to, and you can just follow what I'm doing. The software, by the way, is completely free until April 1st. And if you've watched this webinar and you see it for the first time and you send me an email and say, I've never heard of this software, please give me a free trial, then we probably will. I'll defend you in a criminal action. So if you're a CPA or a lawyer, you can get continuing education credits in Florida. If you're outside of Florida, you're still permitted to watch the presentation, but I can't promise you'll get credit because I don't know the rules in your state or whether it's a state of confusion, actually. If you have any questions, go to the question panel and type in your question, and I will pretend not to see it if I don't know the answer, but I will answer all the questions that I can. In about a day or two, we'll be posting this webinar to our YouTube channel. You can see a lot of other mediocre videos on the YouTube channel, and we welcome your suggestions for those. And
let's get started. So I'm going to get rid of the PowerPoint. I'll no longer be PowerPoint dependent for the rest of my life. And I'm starting here with EstateView. So what I'd like to do is talk about when you do estate planning for a married couple, what information you might like to have to share with them, maybe even before the meeting. So there's a couple things that I do before a meeting now that EstateView helps me with. One thing is I can go to life expectancy and I can click on life expectancy, and then I can click on how many lives are there. Well, it's a married couple. So I know, having successfully completed math in high school, that means that there's 2 of them. So I click on 2, and then I click on their ages. Let's say that one is age 60, the other is age 58. And then I click to see results. And now what I have here is how long they're going to live according to IRS 2010 mortality tables. So the 60-year-old has a 23-year life expectancy. The 58-year-old has a 24.6-year life expectancy, and their joint life expectancy is 29.5 years. Now, what does this mean? This means that if you took the population as it existed in 2010 in the United States, including healthy and unhealthy people, males and females, smokers and non-smokers, a 60-year-old, well, if you had 1,000 60-year-olds in 23 years, on their 83rd birthday, half of them will be living and half of them will no longer be living. Now, for the 58-year-old, 24.6 year life expectancy. So 2 years younger gives you an extra 1.6 year life expectancy. 50, if you give me a married couple ages 60 and 58, 29.5 years from now, half of the married couples those 2 ages will be living and half will not be living. And then we have a year by year life expectancy. So you can see as you get older, for example, a 94-year-old, and oh, let me get a better cursor there. Well, I guess I don't have access to a better cursor right now. So a 94-year-old has, as you see here, a 12.8% chance of dying between their 94th and 95th birthday. That's interesting, isn't it? I'm not sure I really want to know that. But how about a 100-year-old? I had a very interesting situation with a life insurance policy where a 100-year-old wasn't sure whether to pay the premium or not, because when he reached 103, the entire life insurance policy vanished. And he died before 103, and most people were sad, but maybe some of his beneficiaries weren't, because the life insurance policy did not vanish. Most life insurance policies now go to age 123. But a 101-year-old has a 1.42 chance of making it to 102. That's not very good. Now, if you want to see what the life expectancy tables were for 1990, you can click there and they'll show you that people were not living quite as long. That's the life expectancy. So it might be cheerful to tell to the clients, well, look, you got 23 years to get this estate plan done. Just come back in 22 years and we'll work on it. Another thing that they may want to know, and I find that they're very interested in this, is what will I expect to take out of my IRA? So I have a secretary go to our IRA calculator, and I can click on Pro just to show a lot of results. But anyway, you have a 68-year-old, they're gonna die at age 100, and we're going to show 33 years. The investments in the IRA will grow at 7.5%. They're going to be in the 37% tax bracket, which is how they can afford us. They've got $4 million in the IRA, and they could defer their first year RMD. We can show them what that looks like. So I will click on defer first year RMD, and then maximum annual charitable donation. Well, maybe they don't want to make a charitable donation. And so now I click on see results, and this spreadsheet shows the 68-year-old that they don't have to take any distributions until age 74. That's based on their age as of today. And when they start taking distributions, it'll be 7.7%, pretty much on their 71st and a half birthday, if they're going to delay the first payment, and then 4% the next year, then 4.22% the next year. And when does it run out? It never runs out. Even at when they're 100, at age 100, they're only taking out 15%. There's still $424,000, oh, I'm sorry, a year in there. There's still $5 million in there. See, so it never runs out if you only take the minimum distributions, and it can grow at 7.5%. So that's the first one I can show them. And then the second thing I can show them is, hey, why don't you give some money to charity? So you could maybe donate $25,000 a year to charity, and you still defer the first year RMD. And what is that going to look like in your charitable plans? And now you see in the spreadsheet that there'll be the charitable donation growing with inflation, and then income tax savings will be significant from the charitable donation, and you'll still have plenty. So it's just nice to show them this. For charitable clients, we can go with the highest charitable donation that you can take from your pension plan, beginning at 70 and a half, is the best way to maybe use that plan. We can show them that as well. So now for all of these calculators, just so you know, once you get this where you want it, contrary to your spouse, you'll never get them where you want them, but once you get the calculations where you want them, and see, I'm comparing the first alternative to the second one, I can click on share with client, and then click generate URL, click copy to clipboard, and now I can send that client an email. And well, I won't do that right now, but anyway, the email will have that link that you just saw, and then the client will have 2 weeks to use this calculator, starting with the settings that you had. All right, and then I can click on general explanation, which has nothing to do with the military, but we just named it after the military. We could have called it admirable explanation. And then I click on the two alternatives, and then I'll be able to click and make a PowerPoint, and I'll give you an example of how that works in a little while. All right, so those are two things that I like to do before a meeting. So I have that in my meeting notes. Now here's the third thing. I like to know what life insurance costs per million. So let's say that Mary is age 60, and I see here that per million of life insurance, 10-year term, $43.68 for a standard policy, $28.75 for preferred. I wouldn't show them just preferred, because then they'll be disappointed if they don't come out that way in the exams. But this gives me a 10-year term, a 20-year term, whether I can even get a 25 or a 30-year term, and what a universal for life would cost. Now, I don't sell life insurance, but at least now I can say, hey, I think you're short maybe $3 million if you die before the kids are all out of college, and you are 50 years old. So for a 10-year term policy, to get $3 million, it's $4,600 a year, or maybe $3,000 a year. Does that sound like a good thing? If it does, go call an agent and get a physical, and not get physical with the agent, get a physical from the agent. This presentation is rated PG, or probably not so good. All right, so now I've got my life insurance estimator, and I know how much the life insurance will cost. So when I sit down with them, they can see that I've actually done some calculations. In addition, if they are not estate taxable, and I would like to have a productive conversation with them, I can go to the NEST calculator, and NEST stands for Needs Estimated Savings Tabulation, because I wanted a name for it that would have a nice acronym that would be a word, and that's the best I could come up with. If you can come up with a better one, send it to me, and if we actually use it, I'll give you a free 1-year subscription to EstateView when it is no longer free. So what I can do on the needs estimated saving tabulation is, let's say that I've got, and clients can do this for their children. So this is also important to do for your children. So you've got a lead spouse age 40 and a second spouse age 38, and they're going to go to age 90. And I hope I do, and I hope this webinar is over before I turn age 90. And then they'd like to retire at age 60 on $175,000 a year, adjusted for inflation. They'd like to leave their children at least $1.5 million. You don't want to die destitute. And they assume inflation is growing at 3.75%. They've got a $750,000 home. Nowadays, everybody has a $750,000 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. And then their investments are $1.5 million, growing at 6.5%. And they think that they can save $180,000 a year. I mean, this is the most important thing, so we always make it in yellow so that they can see, this needs to be more, or it's already enough. Every year they'll be able to save more because their occupations will grow and they'll spend less, supposedly. And then they're paying their investment advisor 0.75% a year, which you can talk about. And then their tax rate on investments may be low, maybe 1.25% a year. They're in $200,000 of debt. And this is our short form. So I'm going to click to see results. I click to see results. And now I see across the top that saving $160,000 a year, they almost make it. They're going to have a deficit. No, they're going to have a surplus. See that smiley face? So they're ahead of schedule. And that's going to be number one. So that's a good thing. They're ahead of schedule. Let's go to number 2. So that's nest number 1. I'm going to click the duplicate button at the top left. And now I have the identical thing. You see it's identical across the top, but they have a question. They would like to have $1.75 million home so that they have 2 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms. So I'm going to move 750 to $1,750,000. And then guess what they're going to do? How are they going to get that? They're going to increase their debt from $200,000 to $1,200,000. They're going to borrow the money at 7% and pay it over 15 years. Well, now, going back up to the right, this is what we call the side-by-side comparison. I don't have a better word than side-by-side comparison. You have to turn your computer over to the left or the right in order to get it side by side. Otherwise, it's a horizontal side-by-side comparison, also known as a HSB something C. But anyway, that house and that debt puts them into a $911,000 deficit. So they need to save an extra $23,000 a year. And that doesn't take into account that a house is more expensive to maintain. Or they'll have to work a couple of extra years. So it's not the end of the world, but they should understand it. Now you say, wait a minute, life is a lot more complicated than that. I would like to see all sorts of things. So I go from standard mode to pro mode. Pro stands for professional, not tennis pro. So I click on pro, and then I click on OK. And now I have a lot more things to share with them. In fact, I can click on alter summary columns across the right, across the top, and I can show them all kinds of things. So now I have a lot more data I can share. And what's more important is down the left, when I clicked from standard to pro on that right, you have a lot more inputs now. And for all the calculators, your added inputs are marked by vertical lines. That's called a vertical line there. And I believe it's blue. So now I can have 2 tiers of retirement, because most people, when they retire at age 60, they spend a lot of money. And then at age 77 or 78, they slow down and they spend less money. And now I can put more information in about the investments. I can change the tax rate. When they are working, their tax rate will be higher than when they retire. So I can take that into account. And then maybe they're expecting an inheritance, and then maybe they're going to get Social Security in 25 years. Then maybe when they retire, they're going to spend $250,000 and cruise around the world in a little cruise boat where they can get on each other's nerves, sharing a tiny suite and a bathroom. And then their reoccurring expenses for a few years, such as a donation. So what I like about this, and the reason we designed it this way, is I can show this client every column. And if I add something, if I add wedding, bar mitzvah, vacation, it has a column. And the spreadsheet works from left to right, as spreadsheets normally do. And if you want to add a vacation home, well, here's how much more you're going to need. The other thing that it will do for you, and by the way, it shows life insurance needed twice, just so it's not missing. But I can go to alter detail columns here, and I can add things, or I could subtract things. So I can take out life insurance needed there. So now on the far right, this is telling me that if the older spouse is the breadwinner and dies, and you want to be safe, then this person needs 7.4 million of life insurance. And then I can go to my life insurance. That's this year. In 10 years, they'll need 5.6 million. So maybe they should get a $2 million 10-year term policy and a $6 million 20-year term policy. So, and maybe they need a $4 million 30-year policy. So that helps me figure out how much life insurance I'm going to recommend, with the assistance of a competent financial advisor. I'm not trying to replace their financial advisor, but I'm not afraid to tell a client, if I were you, this is probably what I would do. I would talk to my financial advisor. I would talk to Marcia about it. Marcia would tell me I'm wrong. Then I'd change it a little bit. But if I were you, I think I'd be looking at an $8 million policy. Click on Life Insurance Estimator. It automatically knows their ages, and then it programs that in. So if I'm doing estate planning for a wealthy client and they want to leave a lot to charity, and they say, how much do my children need? How much do I need to leave my children? Am I leaving them enough? I have to balance. What do I leave my second wife, my third wife, versus the children of my first marriage? What do they need? Well, they may need $8 million. Let's go ahead and build their lifestyle out. So this is something that I think is important to do. If you're a practicing lawyer or CPA and you want your client's attention, just say to them, Do you know whether you will have enough to retire? And it's amazing. They know all about their assets. They know all about their children. They know all about their car. They've spent days shopping for furniture. They know all about their wardrobe, but they don't really know what they need to retire. So it's a good question to ask. All right. And then once you've built out your spreadsheet, you're able to print convert the spreadsheet to an Excel document and then give them the Excel document and they can use it. Or create a PowerPoint for them, which can then, oops, didn't work that time, but the PowerPoint can then provide them with a summary of the information. Okay, so let me see what questions we have so far. And Joe, you know, the cursor, my cursor program that would have a little circle for the cursor, I can't find it here. It probably needs to be downloaded for the next show. Okay. So I do apologize to everybody for that. All right, so now I'm going to go over some questions. This would be a good time for you to take a biological break if you want to. Okay, after going to EstateView.link and signing in, it only gives me an option to purchase, not to use. I apologize for that. Do you want to, Joe, do you want to call Kevin and ask him to make sure that EstateView is letting people in for free? Somebody says they weren't able to. All right, then, if marriage means a change of address, the U.S. and Postal Service needs to know. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, the and minus indicators in my browser are rotating boxes. Are there specific settings that need to be on off? I'm not sure what you mean on that, Herb. I apologize, but I'm not sure what you need. Okay, from Stuart, for the RMD calculator, can it calculate RMDs for inherited IRAs? Not yet. That's going to be coming sometime in 2024, but not yet. And then how much will it cost? Well, the basic model will be $199 a year, and the most sophisticated model will be $399 a year. Okay, so now I'm going to go to married clients. And thanks to everybody for continuing to be on this webinar. And again, I welcome your questions. And if you're a client, I'm not going to charge you for answering your question. So you're not going to get a bill Thursday from saying, answering Joan's question about portability. So this is your big opportunity. All right. Now, I'm going to go to married clients. And when I click on married clients, the display comes up. The left-hand side, which I can scroll up and down, is my data input section. The middle is my results display. And right now you're seeing the trust logistics display. And the right-hand side are the scenarios that I can show. And we have a cute little thing on the right-hand side. You can scroll up and down and it shows you a little picture of what you're going to be seeing. Or if you don't like that approach, you can click show hide images and it's, oh, I'm sorry, not show hide images, scenarios. Oh, guess that button's not working. Okay, you need to remember to put that button back. All right. So what I have here to show you very quickly to get you oriented is I've checked the box for every type of estate tax planning technique we offer, all 8 of them. I've put in the client's name and my name, their ages, when they're going to die, their net worth in real estate, their net worth in investments, how much they're going to gift, et cetera, et cetera. And now I can simply click on dies in year 1, no planning on the right. And it shows me that under their situation, a $3 million house, $29 million of investments, they're saving $450,000 a year until retirement, and then a little bit less after that. If they both die this year, you've got an estate tax of $1.8 million. But if they use our planning techniques this year and they die, after they sign their documents, the estate tax goes to 0. But if they do no planning and the surviving spouse survives for 20 years, I'll click there. And now you see that today they're at 32 million. In 10 years, they're going to be at 43 million plus 4 million. And what does this tell me? Well, the numbers add up. Even at a low rate of return that we've got them in, which I'll show you what it is in a while, they will have a tremendous estate, and the estate tax will be $20 million. That will get their attention. That's with no planning. But then I show them with a credit shelter trust, it'll be 18 million. With a qualified personal residence trust, it'll be 15 million. If they do annual gifting, it'll be 13 million. If they gift discounted LLC interests, it'll be 12 million 8. If they put their life insurance in a life insurance trust, it'll be 11 million, et cetera, et cetera. If they make a large gift, if they do an installment sale, and if they leave the rest to charity, then we can get the estate tax down to 0. And I've got 2 ways of looking at this. The first way I just showed you is the logistical chart, where at the top we have what they start with in year 1, and then in the middle we have what they have, what the situation is on the first death, and the bottom what happens on the second death. For example, showing the assets that would go to a credit shelter trust on the first death, which I'll explain later. That's one way to look at it. But this only shows you a snapshot in years 10 and 20. For example, if I go to installment sale and I click there and they do the installment sale, which I'll explain in a little while, the estate tax is only 11 million, which may be acceptable to them. Maybe I can move it up a little bit, get that estate tax down to 0 there by doing a big installment sale. But that's good. That shows you at year 20. Now I'm going to go to timeline. And timeline shows me that if they die in any of these years as I go across the timeline, there will be an estate tax. It won't taper down until 2041. So I really need to do more than just the installment sale and looking at the timeline. And then what happens if the first spouse dies sooner or later? I can actually move it, and that will tell me that based upon the year of death of the first dying spouse, it's a different situation. So without the installment sale, the estate tax is much larger. The red is the portion of their estate that's going to go to estate tax. And without the life insurance trust, it's larger. And the other thing it's showing me is each separate trust. So the guide is here, but green are the business and investment assets, red is the estate tax, darker green is your house. The credit shelter trust is a whatever that color is. Marcia would have to tell me. So the gift trust is blue. Hopefully somebody would be blue if you died, whether you pay estate tax or not. All right, so that's the timeline. And then we have a bunch of details for those of you who like to see the math for each scenario. And then we have an annual amounts section. If you want to say, well, how did that installment sale trust get so big? Or how did that bypass trust get so big? And this shows you what happened inside of it every single year, what our underlying calculations are. Okay, so go back to where I was, the married couple plan. And now that you know in general or in Admiral how it works, and I'm trying to get it to fit width, and it's not fit withing very good. Now we're going to go into more detail on the inputs. So across the top, I have shortcuts. So if I want to just go to CUPERT, Qualified Personal Residence Trust, I would just click on CUPERT at the top left, and then it takes me to the CUPERT input. So that's all that these little blue words are. And I can hide it to have more room. So the second thing on the top is your selection of strategies. You've got a bypass trust, a CUPERT, annual gifting. I don't have to use all these strategies. You know, I might say, well, they don't have a house, so we're not going to do a CUPERT. And they don't have children or grandchildren, so we're not going to do annual gifting. And they don't want to do a life insurance trust, so we'll turn off life insurance. So now I'm going to plan just based on and you see these things are turned off. So now, even after my installment sale, I have a bigger tax because they're not using these techniques. So that allows me to pick and choose the techniques I want to use, and I can turn them on and off both up here and down lower where each technique is. All right. So now we go down, we put the client's name, and we put the client's age. And if you want to know the age by date of birth, you could enter in the date of birth. Then it tells you their age. Then you can go with male or female and tobacco user or not, and it will tell you the actuarial table life expectancy, which is from a life insurance table, not the IRS tables. So this may be more realistic. And then I like to give my clients an extra 2 or 3 years because wealthy people or people who can afford us and are smart enough to come see us also go see doctors and take their medicines more often. And they drink better liquor, so it's more fun to visit them. And then how much of the $13,610,000 estate tax exemption has this person used? Let's say that he's done some gifting. He's given away $1.5 million in the past. And what's he saving? Let's say that this family, external from all of the assets, this person is earning $450,000 a year and expects to do so until age 72. And will retire, well, let's make it 73, retire at age 73, and then start spending $350,000 a year. And then the spouse has a name, and the spouse also has a life expectancy. Now, I like to have the first spouse die earlier than life expectancy, because if they're not going to die earlier than life expectancy, they won't even come see me. But then the second spouse, you could show a little bit later than life expectancy if you want, because one of them, as we saw from the beginning, one of them is going to live a longer period of time. And so we'll give the surviving spouse to 2047. And let's say the surviving spouse has never used any of the exemption. And after the death of the first dying spouse, the surviving spouse will work and earn, let's just say, enough to pay expenses until age 73, and then at age 73 we'll spend $300,000 a year. Okay. Now, if I want to know about life insurance, because they don't seem to have enough, I can click on life insurance estimates, and now it knows the ages, so it allows me to come up with numbers for life insurance cost. So now you can do this even if a client is not estate taxable. You might just want to know, what are they going to be worth? How much of an inheritance are they going to leave? So I mean, these could be modest numbers, but still worthwhile to show them this is where you're heading. If you could save more, you'll have more. The blue explained button explains that cash flow coming in or out of the family. that $450,000 a year that they're saving now, and the fact that they won't be saving money after the first death, when you click explained, it just summarizes the numbers. Now, these numbers, if you have a client that owns a business or an investment, and not only does it grow at say 7% a year, but it also throws off dividends of $100,000 a year growing with inflation. When I give that away, this 450 will go down to 350. And I'll show you where that happens. But that's another issue. You know, it's really easy to run numbers and say, well, you have this and it's going to grow by this amount a year. But if you're not taking into account the actual cash flow that's coming in, when somebody owns a business, then it's just not, the numbers can be way off from what reality will be. So that's why we built it this way. Now, let's talk about portability allowance. If I die and I leave everything to Marcia, then she has not used my $13,610,000 exemption. So she gets to add it to her exemption. So if her exemption is 10 million and mine is 13,610,000, I die first. She now has an exemption of 23,610,000. So why should she want me to put $13,610,000 into a credit shelter trust on the first death, in which event that trust is out of her estate for estate tax purposes, but she has to administer that separate trust. So isn't she better off just taking all the assets outside of the trust and she has the portability allowance? And the answer for wealthy folks is no, because number one, I want to draft a credit shelter trust because I like to draft them. But number two, if I leave 13,610,000 in a credit shelter trust for her and it grows at 6% or 5.5% a year, then that's going to avoid a lot of estate tax, because the 13,610,000 exemption that she gets from me under the portability allowance does not grow with inflation. And if she remarries and her new husband dies and leaves and has no exemption because he leaves a lot to his children, then she loses my portability allowance. The advantage of her taking the assets outright or into what we call a Q-tip marital deduction trust is that when she dies, there'll be a new fair market value income tax basis. So we balance one thing against the other. And the true answer for planners on the question of whether I would want this to go outright to Marcia, so my children pay less capital gains tax after her death, or whether I want it to go into a credit shelter trust, is be flexible in your drafting to enable the surviving spouse to decide after the first death whether they want the portability allowance or whether they prefer to fund the credit shelter trust. And the difference it makes here, I can go to my credit shelter trust. When I click on the right under bypass trust, it automatically comes up on the left. We call it a bypass trust. And I can click the box to always maximize the bypass trust. So by the time the first spouse dies, assuming the exemption goes down to half in 2026 and continues to go up with inflation, the most they'll be able to put in there is $9,000,008. Or do you limit the funding to half, because it can't exceed half of the assets, because half of the assets belong to each client, each spouse, and you can only fund that credit shelter trust with half the assets. But in any event, I see that without the credit shelter trust, my estate tax is $19 million. But with the credit, and you see that the exemption of the surviving spouse is 25 million. But with the credit shelter trust, click on that. Now the estate tax is down to 17 million. The credit shelter trust is funded with 9 million on the first death and has 16 million that passes estate tax free on the second death. And you see that this bypass trust includes what we call an explosive asset. I'll explain to you in a little while what the explosive asset is. Now, if you're close and you're not sure whether you want to fund the bypass trust or not, as I said, you wait till the first spouse dies, and if you draft properly, the surviving spouse can decide by using what we call a Clayton Q-tip clause, C-L-A-Y-T-O-N Q-TIP clause, and you can clean your ears out also. It's a technical term. But if I die and there's a bypass trust, and on Marcia's death, she's below the estate tax exemption because the estate tax went away or she gives it all to charity and our children, then there's provisions in our credit shelter trust that allow what we call independent fiduciaries to give Marcia the power to appoint the trust assets to creditors of her estate. And that causes the assets in the trust to be included in her estate when she dies to get the step up. So it's not just one or the other. And thanks for hearing me out on that. It's called the portability allowance. Now, the next decision that a couple can make is, let me line this up better. So here they are. After the bypass trust, we're still looking at an estate tax of 17 million. By the way, what happens if the exemption doesn't go down? Do they still have an issue? So I can go up here, and right now you're looking at a 17 million tax if the exemption drops by 50% in 2026. What happens if it doesn't? I click right there. Now the estate tax is only 6 million for. So it's good to show clients both ways so that they know. All right. The next planning opportunity I can show them is annual gifting. Well, actually, first we're going to show a qualified personal residence trust. So I'm going to click on qualified personal residence trust, and what you see in the middle, based upon the settings on the left, are that each spouse puts half of the $3 million home into a qualified personal residence trust. And with a qualified personal residence trust, on the left-hand side here, as you can see, I elected 2 qualified personal residence trusts, and 100% of the values going to the 2 trusts, 50% each. The residence is worth $3 million, and the 75/20 rate, which is an actuarial rate that we use in the calculators to comply with the Treasury Department rules, is 5% that I'm using. And I put it in for an 8-year term. So what that means is I'm setting up a trust for Marcia and our children. I'm putting half of a home into that trust worth $1.5 million, but I'm retaining the right to live in the home rent-free for 8 years. So the value of the gift is not $1.5 million. When you run the IRS tables, the amount of that gift based on the age of the client and an 8-year delay is $716,000. So I'm only using $716,000 of my estate and gift tax exemption, but I'm getting whatever the home is going to be worth on my death out of my estate. So we see here that the home's going to be worth $4.8 million on the first death in 14 years. So getting that home out of the estate at a cost of only $716,000 of exemption is worthwhile. And then the other thing you see here is it says cash from rent, $1,209,000. On the second death, cash from rent, $1,659,000. What is that? Well, after the 8th year, I start paying rent, and I set the rent at 8% of the value of the property, which is not unusual. And boy, the rent in the house between the two of them are worth $6,600,000 plus $5 million, $11 million out of my estate for estate tax purposes, based upon about $1.5 million of gifts. So that's a pretty good gig. Going from bypass trust, the estate tax of $17 million, to Cupert, estate tax of $13 million, that saved $4 million of estate tax, and I didn't have to hardly do anything. I drafted 2 trusts, I deeded the property to the trusts, remind the clients after the Cupert term that they should not be trustee of their own Cupert after the term, and that they have to start paying rent. There's no income tax on the rent if the Cupert is drafted properly. And the rent saves as much from estate tax as the transfer of the property itself. Now, this is a shorthand Cupert calculation that I did. And by the way, it's so cool. If I just click down to one Cupert, if I just did one house, you see the difference. So, and then if I go shorter or longer with the Cupert, if I go at 8 years, the savings is $14 million. If I go 16 years, it fails, because if I die during the possessory term, then the Cupert doesn't do anything. It's like it never existed. So it's reminding me there. But if I go a 12-year Cupert, my estate tax savings, $14,960,000. Now, if you're going to actually do a Cupert, once the client or you have decided that this seems like the right thing to you, you can go to calculators and you can scroll down to the Cupert calculator. There it is. And then these were the inputs, but and this is the $199 version of the software, allowing me to do a Cupert for a 70-year-old, let's say for a 65-year-old, allows me to figure out, you use the nearest birthday, not the latest birthday, then the term of the Cupert, click for results, and it's going to give me the numbers, and this is my exact amount of the gift. And if I want to see, well, how about that's for a Cupert on a 65-year-old for 10 years. Let me click duplicate. What if I do a 13-year Cupert? Okay, now my gift is a little lower with a 13-year Cupert, but will I live the 13 years? Should I buy life insurance in case I die? Maybe I'll hedge my bets and I'll do a 7-year Cupert as well. I'll put 1/3 of the house into a 7-year Cupert, 1/3 into a 10-year Cupert, 1/3 into a 13-year Cupert to hedge my bets. And then later I'll trim my hedges. First you hedge your bets, then you trim your hedges. I think that's a new joke, right? Okay. Now I go to Pro Plus. And when I go to Pro Plus, I could do some neater things with this Cupert, including showing me my probability of surviving the term. I've got a 74% chance of making it 13 years, an 82% chance of making it 10 years, but 88% chance of making it 7 years. And then it's going to show me my estate tax savings, and you see the difference made by using the less exemption. But then you say, Alan, I heard that if I do a Cupert, it's out of my estate, but if I die and it's out of my estate, my family has to pay capital gains tax when they sell the house. Is that correct? And the answer is the IRS thinks so. I personally don't. We've written long articles about Revenue Ruling 2023-2 that I'm glad to send you, but there's a good chance you're not going to get the capital gains tax savings. So you may want to compare the capital gains tax savings against the estate tax savings, which we do here in the spreadsheet. So you can see here the estate tax savings in this particular scenario outweigh the capital gains situation. And I don't have time to take you through all the details of the CUPERT, but we do run all these numbers for you, including whether you want to pay rent. And if you're going to pay rent, then there's going to be rent income, and you're going to have significant estate tax savings. And then also you can go to timelines and charts, and this will show you the portion of the home that will escape estate tax and the probability of the client surviving that term. And when you click the term up, the pie chart can change. So I can go down to the third pie chart. This is cool. Click the term up, more savings, but less chance of survival as you go up. So, and they can dance and sing, la 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 la. Okay, and then also probability of survival by age, property interest value over time, and you can actually compare these three CUPERTs. Then I click on general explanation, click on CUPERT 1, 2, and 3, click on PowerPoint explanation, general explanation, short explanation, planner's checklist, put in the client's name, John Singh, submit, and then there's your tight explanation of numbers on the display, and 3 CUPERT PowerPoints. I'll go ahead and open one. The CUPERT PowerPoint. Oops, there it is. Come here, you little PowerPoint. No, I don't want to. Yes, come here. Open. I'm not very open. Yes, you are. Open. Okay. So there's your PowerPoint prepared for John Singh. We decided to do an 11-year CUPERT. This is one of the ones we did. 80% chance of survival, $2 million home, $930,000 gift. Live there for a few years, having fun. And then after year 11, you got $2.7 million of value, estate tax savings, $738,000. And there's your PowerPoint summary. So then I can just forward that to the client along with an email that gives them the share with client link so that they can go right to the software and use it immediately. And what we like to do is we go to Zoom and we just record a quick explanation of how we did this and what the software does, how it works, and then we just send them that recording along with the link. And clients who are engineers, MBAs, spreadsheet fiends, or 14-year-olds who know how to use Excel can have a lot of fun with it, especially if they have boring lives. All right, so back to married couples. The point is that I've studied the CUPERT now, and I've shown the client how it works, what it's about, and now I can go to these settings under CUPERT and match up consistent with what my recommendation is, and I know how the CUPERT works in the scheme of things. So we've studied the bypass trust, we've studied the CUPERT. Now annual gifting. I have some very wealthy clients who have over 100 children and grandchildren. Over 100. See, if you have 9 children and each of them have 9 children, that's 81 offspring. And then if you have 18,000 exemption per person and you have 100 offspring, then that's $1.8 million a year per spouse that can be gifted to an irrevocable trust. That's one of the reasons that there have been proposals every once in a while to say that every married couple can simply gift $50,000 a year instead of $18,000 a person, because that would seem more fair. But in any event, the tax law is what the tax law is. So I want to go to annual gifting. I click on annual gifting, and on the left-hand side here, they may already have a trust in place. So I could just go ahead and put what's in that trust. I'll say that they have a $1,250,000 in a trust before they even hired me. So it just immediately shows up there. And then I'm going to say that they have 2 children. And for the first 10 years, that's all they'll have. And then after 10 years, their 2 children will have 4 grandchildren. And then they'll be gifting more when that happens. And instead of gifting cash, they'll gift part ownership of an LLC, and we could show a 25% discount. So now when I go from Cupert, where this, now I go from Cupert to discount, I'm sorry, I go from Cupert, an estate tax of 15 million, to annual gifting, an estate tax of 10 million. Now, how did that happen? And let's reduce the gifting trust, initial value of the gifting trust, to 0. Well, the gifting, by year 14, that trust has 2.8 million in it, and by year 23, it's got 6.5 million times 40% estate tax savings. Now, I met with a client yesterday, and the client said, well, I like giving that much away, but how can I use it? And I said, you can't, but what you could do is spouse 1 makes a gift of $18,000 a year per child and grandchild to a trust for the health, education, and maintenance of spouse 2 and the descendants. So then if you need it later, at least that trust, being what we call a spousal limited access trust, can pay expenses for spouse 2. And you could even put a floating spouse clause in there, which says that if you replace your spouse, if your spouse dies tragically, and then you not so tragically find another spouse, that other spouse becomes a beneficiary of the trust. Now, spouse 1 thought that was a good idea, spouse 2, not so much, which is pretty typical. But in any event, so I could do an annual gifting of $18,000 per child and grandchild to Marcia as trustee of a trust for Marcia and our descendants. That's pretty much a no-brainer, isn't it? I think Marcia's going to survive me. Nobody's going to mistreat that money. It's creditor proof, it's next spouse proof, and it's going to avoid federal estate tax. Now, the other question is, does Marcia put her $18,000 a year into a trust for descendants only? Because I don't believe in doing what's called a reciprocal trust. I think that that's dangerous from an estate tax standpoint. For me to set up a trust that benefits Marcia, and Marcia sets up a trust that benefits me, supposedly if they're completely different from each other, but overall there's a lifetime benefit, that's supposed to be safe from an estate tax purposes. I'm not so sure. So enough already of the gifting. Have you had enough of the gifting? Or would you like to see what the discounted gifting helps you buy? So discounted gifting, 25%, estate tax goes from $12,350,000 to $11,477,000. That assumes a 25% discount. Now, Jerry Hesh says use a 29% discount, don't get audited. But the appraisers often come up with a 40% discount. So let's say when I toggle from 25% to 30%, the estate tax goes from 11,000,007 to 11,000,002, and then when I toggle to 35%, it goes down to 10,000,009. So 35% discount, 10,000,009. 25% discount, 11,000,005. It doesn't make a ton of difference, but at least you can show the client what you're doing. And I've got to remember to tell Kevin that anything over 40% discount should turn red from embarrassment and warning. Okay, so that's how I can discuss and handle that annual gifting with the client. The next thing is the life insurance. And the life insurance inputs are a little bit complicated. It's the most complicated part of EstateView is the life insurance inputs. We do have an instruction manual and you can easily learn how to do this, but right now I am showing 2 life insurance policies and they are before and after. So this person has a term life insurance policy. It is not an irrevocable life insurance trust. It's a 20-year term policy. The premium is $8,000 a year. The death benefit is $2 million. Now, the after is exactly the same, except that we check the box for the life insurance trust. So now I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to go before life insurance trust. I'm on discounted gifting. You've got an estate tax of $10.9 million. Now, when I click on the life insurance trust, the estate tax goes to $9.9 million because that life insurance policy pays off $2 million in year 14 and is worth $2.7 million that passes estate tax free. Now, the calculation did take into account that there's less in the gifting trust because you're using part of your annual gifting allowance to pay the life insurance. So before life insurance, the gifting trust had $10,024,000. After life insurance, the gifting trust had $9,650,000. So it's keeping track of all of those numbers. And what I could do now is I could add another policy. Let's say that I want to give spouse number 2 a policy. So I click on green, add pre-planning policy. And then let's say that spouse 2 has a permanent policy, not a permanent hairstyle, but a permanent policy. You could have both. And then let's say that they're going to pay 12 years of premiums, $8,000 a year, and then $4,000 a year for 15 years for a $600,000 death benefit in the first 13 years. Then it goes to $800,000 after that. It's a permanent policy. That's spouse number 2, and I want to show that before and after planning. Before planning, no life insurance trust. And then I click on copy pre-planning policy to post-planning. And now there is the same policy, but I put it in an eyelet. Or maybe it's in an eyelet both times. But in any event, now you're going to see 2 life insurance trusts, one for Bob and one for Mary. And then I could even add a second to die life insurance policy. And that would always be a permanent policy. And it knows that. It doesn't offer you a term second to die because there's no such thing before and after. So that's life insurance. But if you don't like life insurance, and by the way, it can backfire. If these people live a long time and their investments are growing at 7% and the life insurance is really a 4% return, or they pay term premiums and they die after the term policy expires, then this will show you that the estate tax will go up. And I can also say enough of the life insurance and click off, and the life insurance disappears. Just like that Woody Allen movie where he has this choice of I think the death penalty or life in prison with a life insurance agent. You could just make the life insurance agent disappear. I don't recommend it though. All right, the next question, and this is going to be the $2026 million question, is should they make a large gift and use all of the $13 million exemption this year before they lose it in 2026? And our large gift calculator does allow me to show you guessed it, a large gift. So I could just click up here. I'm at 0 large gift right now, 9,000,009. Click on 500,000, 9,000,006. Click on 1,000,000, 9,000,002. Click on 6,000,000, estate tax down to 6,000,001. Now, we have a large gift calculator that I'm going to go to in a little while, I think towards the end, because that probably will take up a lot of time for those of you who will be not awake during it. But let's just say for now, there's going to be a $3 million gift. And by the way, when you make a gift of 3 million, do you give 3 million of stocks or real estate? Or do you put 3 million of stock or real estate into an LLC and you keep the 1% voting member interest and you give the 99% non-voting member interest to the trust for your children and you take a discount? So right now I'm showing a $3 million gift without discount, getting the estate tax down to 8 million. What if I take a 30% discount? Now the estate tax is down to 7,000,004 because I got 99% of 3 million out of my estate, but it only counted as a $2,100,000 gift. And now when I want to look at more, when I click up on the amount, the value gifted before discount, it automatically calculates the discount. And as I click up, I see that I get to a 0 estate tax if the client will make a 12,000,005 gift today. And that if they do that, their remaining assets will be significantly less in year 14. Will they run out of assets? Becomes the question. And you can predict that with this, but this is a short form. I'm going to take you to the large, more complicated large gift calculator in a little while. And this assumes that the client will pay all the income tax on that trust until the first spouse dies. We're assuming that the first spouse is making this large gift. But if you click off what we call grantor trust status and make the trust pay its own taxes at a certain time, then you have more assets, as you can see here, but more estate tax. So at least we allow you to show that in short form. But a lot of clients don't want to make a 12,000,005 gift. Now, another thing you could do, I could make the 12,000,005 gift. But let's say I'm on a second spouse and that spouse has never used the spouse's 13 million exemption and is willing to let me use the exemption because that spouse doesn't really have a lot of assets or concern about the estate tax. So I click here on split the large gift, and then the estate tax goes down a little bit more. So it does give you the ability to do that and to show the impact of the large gift. Let me see if we have any questions at this point. The biggest question is, when will this be over? And the answer is never, never. This is just a great dream and it won't be over. All right, but I am going, I've got 47 more minutes. Now for a lot of you, I know that's a billable hour. Some of you, it's only 8/10 of a billable hour, but we have 47 minutes. All right, let's see what we have here. Sorry, I'm reading. Does or will the program provide that on the first death, the decedent's share of the estate will go to a Q-tip trust to get a second basis on the survivor's death? David, it does not show the Q-tip trust. I think someday we will, but right now it's just the Q-tip trust, because it qualifies for the marital deduction, is just part of the surviving spouse's assets. Okay, what features are not included in the 199 version? I'll cover that at the end. Does or will the program provide that on the first death, Oh, I'm sorry, that's the Q-tip part. Okay. Can you show us the large gift calculator? Yes, of course I will. Okay. And then again, somebody's having a hard time getting into this for free. I apologize. There may be a setting issue that we'll be fixing very quickly. All right. So thank you for your questions. Now we're going to get to what many of us believe is the absolutely most effective method of avoiding estate tax for clients of all values who have estate tax issues, and that is what we call the installment sale to a grantor trust. And I'll tell you what that is, and then I'll show you some numbers. Let's say that I have a $30 million investment portfolio, and it's growing at 7.2% a year, which means it's doubling in value every 10 years. So this year it's worth 30 million, 10 years, and this webinar will still be going on in 10 years if it doesn't seem that way. In 10 years, that'll be worth 60 million. And in another 10 years, it'll be worth 120 million. That's a lot. So what I do is I give a gift to an irrevocable trust for Marcia and our descendants, and I make a gift of only $3 million to it, and then I sell 30 million of investments to this trust in exchange for a 4.2% interest rate note. So that's not I've made a $3 million gift. I've only used $3 million of my exemption, but I've converted 30 million of assets growing at 7.2% to a promissory note growing at 4.2%. So those assets in the first year grow by 2.1 million, but in the first year I only get $1,250,000 in payments. The second year it grows by even more because of the compound growth, and I only get these payments. So when you run the numbers on that, it can be impressive, but I can make it more impressive. I can put $30 million worth of assets into an LLC and transfer the 99% non-voting member interest in the LLC to a trust for Marcia and our descendants in exchange for maybe a $22 million note bearing interest at 4.2%, which is what, about $880,000 a year? So these investments are growing by 7%, but I'm only getting $880,000 a year. And then you have a question for me, and that question is, when will this be over? No. Bring the dummy back, can you? No. Your question is, who's paying the income tax on all this growth? This portfolio has dividends, interest, capital gains. Who's paying the tax? The answer is I am, because of something called the grantor trust rules. So now 7.2% growing tax-free, I'm only getting $880,000 a year, and I have to pay the tax on all the income of that trust. So is this an effective technique? And the answer is, let's see. So and should I do that instead of a large gift? Because do I really want to put $12 million into a trust that I can't get back? So I click off large gift. Now I'm at a $9.9 million estate tax, and I'm going to go to the installment sale. And in the installment sale, I'm going to talk about the exploding asset in a little while. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, let's look at this. I'm going to put $15 million into an LLC. And then I'm going to value 90% of that $15 million at $10.5 million, I'm going to sell that 99% LLC interest in exchange for a $10.5 million promissory note. And I'm just going to not include my exploding asset. And then that note is going to bear interest at 4.14%, which is the present applicable federal rate, for 20 years, and then it's going to balloon. So the annual note payment I'm going to get is $434,700. So now let's see what that does to the estate tax. I click on installment sale, 20-year note, and that brings the estate tax to 0. Is that real? Could that be real? Let's see the installment sale. It starts with 16 million of value. That was the gift I made plus the assets I put in the LLC. I got a note back for 10.5 million, payment amount 434. That trust had a $19 million value in year 14, and at year 23 it had a $28 million value. The surviving spouse still had a significant net worth, but by reason of the bypass trust and the Cupert, there's no estate tax. Now, does it work instantly? Let's go to timeline. Click on timeline. No. You know, it looked good when you looked at Trust Logistics, estate tax 0, but that you had to live a long time to get it there. So do you buy life insurance? Do you sell more? If I want to sell more, oh, and by the way, let's say that I only use a 25% discount. I follow Professor Hesch's advice. The estate tax is a little bit more. Let's play with that. 25% discount, estate tax 487,000. 20% discount, estate tax $1.5 million. So you get about $1 million of savings for each 5% of discount that you take. But again, going to timeline, I can now go to timeline, go to installment sale, and just keep clicking up as high as I can to sell as much as I can. But you can only go so far to where you would need to do something else to avoid the estate tax. Now I want to show you, by the way, before I forget that I forgot, when I click on these 4 arrows, and I'll go back to Trust Logistics. Okay, hold on to your seat, put your seatbelt on. When I click on these 4 arrows, then the inputs become much easier to use. So your secretary can put these inputs in. You know, I put the inputs in during a phone call with the client, sometimes even during a Zoom call while we're talking. I'm putting my inputs in, I'm looking at it while I'm talking to the client, and then I can start showing it to them. But anyway, that's the how to make the inputs bigger. Okay, I want to show you the exploding asset now. So often clients come in and they say, I've got a business and it's worth 50 million, but it was appraised for 30 million. And I really think that if I get that patent, or if they start doing roll-ups in my industry, or if I can acquire this star salesperson, this company that's worth 3.5 million today, or let's say it's worth 5 million today, will be worth $10 million in 5 years, and I'll sell it. And the income tax on that sale will be 2 million. And let's make it even bigger. Let's go here. And by the way, I could just type in 15M for 15 million. And then income tax 3,250,000. And now my estate tax is back up because of that. But I could also have that explosive asset sold to some extent in the installment sale. Should I sell 10% of it, 20% of it, 30% of it, 40% of it? And as I click up, my estate tax goes down, and I learn how much I should sell of that explosive asset in the installment sale. So that's the and then in orange on the display, aren't you glad I'm telling you this? In orange on the display, you see it includes the explosive asset. So, all right, back to my inputs. Let me go to Bitwhip, show inputs, pull that out. There we go. All right, so that is the installment sale to the grantor trust. Now they may want to do a different type of installment sale, because here's a trick of the trade. I'm back to the installment sale, and I look at the timeline, and what am I going to do about all that red stuff? Well, I can go to my self-canceling installment note calculator over here, and I can say this client is age 65, and I'm going to do a 15-year note. The client has a 19-year life expectancy, so I'll do a 19-year note. And I want the note to cancel when the client dies anytime in the 19 years. And in exchange for that, I'm going to pay a higher interest rate on the note. It's called a self-canceling installment note. Now, the IRS says you have to be in reasonable health to do a self-canceling installment note. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's their position. If you're not in reasonable health, it's safer to do what's called a private annuity. We have a calculator for that too. You knew I was going to say that. So what this is telling me now, I click to see results. And what this is telling me is that if I charge interest at 7.7315%, then when I die during the note term, there's no estate tax. So I could have some or all of my $15 million note as self-canceling. Now, when I go to my Pro Plus version, this is going to serve as a more detailed calculator for my installment sale. So I can crank up the gift amount to whatever that, typically the rule of thumb is you do a seed capital gift of 10% of the sale amount. I can crank up the sale amount. I can put in my discount. I can sell some assets that are discounted, some that are not discounted. And then this will run the numbers for me on a spreadsheet that shows me the estate tax savings from getting the assets out, the estate tax savings from paying the income tax each year for the trust, and the estate tax savings I will have from putting this in place, even with the higher interest rate before I die, but the estate tax savings will be a lot more if I die during the note term. So I'm not at all doing justice to the explanation here, but I do want to show you the PowerPoint because I want to show off what a nice PowerPoint this is. So I'm going to put $1 million seed year one gift, and then I'm going to put $5.5 million in an LLC, take a 35% discount, sell it for a $3.5 million promissory note. I'm going to, you could have the note be high interest rate, self-canceling, or applicable federal rate, not self-canceling. Now I've got the Excel spreadsheet. I can have any of these columns that I want, including probability of death each year, the year, etc. Then I can go ahead and save this as an Excel spreadsheet and show it to the client as an Excel spreadsheet. And then I can also click on Generate Skin Explanation and PowerPoint, click Submit. There it is. And oops, pulled up the wrong one. Let me move that there. There you are, you little skin. And now I've got step one, you put those assets into the LLC. Step two, you sell those at the LLC interest to the trust. It's a self-canceling note. Here's how it works. Here's your actual numbers as calculated that we saw on the spreadsheet. And there's the spreadsheet itself. So now that I think I know what I want to do, and of course I could view 2 or 3 of these in different ways, side by side horizontal comparison, whatever else we're going to call it, then I can go back to married and go ahead and put in the input that I want to see. So that installment sale to grantor trust runs amazing numbers, and it's very user friendly. Even though interest rates are much higher now than they were, it's still worth getting these in place. And if the interest rates go down, you can refinance the note. By the way, the history of the interest rates, I click on that little blue button there under Cupert, and that gives me my 75/20 rate, 4.35% for March. February was 4.14 for a long-term note. So we're going to be able to use 4.14% this month and next month for installment sales. All right, so then my final strategy and my favorite strategy, and the strategy that you as the viewers of this webinar can use very effectively, is to show clients the tremendous advantage of charitable giving. Uncle Sam will support your charitable giving. So here I am with the installment sale. I've got the tax down to $3.1 million, and maybe it'll be lower, maybe it'll be higher. Now all I have to do is say, well, what if I want to give to charity? So the bottom left, I click on charity, and then I've got the name of the charity there that I can type in. And then I want to give whatever it takes to avoid estate tax to charity. How much would that be to reduce the estate tax? So watch this. $3.1 million of estate tax, $83.4 million in assets going to the beneficiaries. Now I click on testamentary charity, and the estate tax is 0, but what has to go to charity is $8 million. And that means that the beneficiaries are sacrificing $4.7 million to avoid $3.1 million of estate tax. Do they want to do that? Some do, some don't. I strongly favor it because now there's no estate tax, and if the IRS audits me, they're not going to get estate tax even if they disallow some of my techniques. But charity may get a lot. So the next conversation is, has the client ever considered a charitable lead annuity trust? So I click from charity on the bottom left-hand side to charitable lead annuity trust. And then a charitable lead annuity trust is a trust that receives a distribution, and then it pays charity over a term of years. And at the end of the term, whatever's left in the trust can pass to family estate tax free. So this is telling me that if I could do a charitable lead annuity trust that would pay 60% of its value over 20 years to charity, leaving 40% of its value after 20 years to descendants, then the estate tax is 0. The descendants get the the 78.6 million on the second death, and then they get $3.1 million 20 years later, and the charity gets $4.7 million. Now, if you use discounts and you use the right assets, you might find that the charity only gets 50%, Or maybe it's conceivable, not probable, but it's conceivable that the charity only gets 40%. Well, how will I know, how will I explain a charitable lead annuity trust to a client? And how will I decide what kind of charitable lead annuity trust to do? Well, you guessed it, we have a calculator for charitable lead annuity trusts. And I'll take you to that calculator in a minute. But before I go there, I just want to show you our other buttons on the married couples so you know what we're doing here, such as if you thought I knew what I was doing here. So the coolest button in the entire software is Generate Client Letter. So I click on Generate Client Letter, and then do I want to see all the scenarios or just one of them, or two of them, or three of them? And which displays do I want in my letter? And then I click on Generate Client Letter, and now, you guessed it,
Hi Planner.
the computer
I am now preparing the letter for
generating
Bob Sample
a
and
letter.
Mary Sample.
The computer's also
Their total
talking to
investment
me,
assets
summarizing the
were worth
situation.
$25,500,000.
We honestly do that just so it
Their
takes your
residence is
mind
worth
off the
$3
fact that it takes a little bit of time for this letter to be prepared, as you see in the bottom. See, there's thousands of squirrels, and they're all preparing this letter. They're typing it in just like a Warner Brothers cartoon. And now I have the letter. It's a Word document, and I don't want this message to come out ever again. Okay, so here's my letter, and the letter is to the client by name. It mentions your name, and then one of the favorite things about the letter is it gives you all the inputs so you can see what inputs you used, and then it tells you how each of the modules has worked. If you do no planning, there's your tax situation, there's a summary. If you do a bypass trust, if you do a QPERT, now you can doctor the letter up, especially if you're writing it to a doctor. If you're writing it to a dentist, you can dentist the letter up and then send it to them, and it's a nice deliverable. So we like to give them the letter and then the video that we can shoot, and then let them share the use of the calculator all at once. Now I can also click on Generate PowerPoint. If I click on Generate PowerPoint, then the same thing happens, except it's all popped into a PowerPoint. All the slides that you see here would pop into a PowerPoint. Now, if I want to compare two estate plans, I would just do estate plan A, like I have here, and then I might do estate plan B with just a few changes, with the exemption not going down, without an installment sale. So then the client can just compare the letters side by side, but we don't have an actual comparison yet. And as I said before, I can share this with the client, share the actual software with the client for a couple of weeks by clicking on Generate URL, click on Copy to Clipboard, open an email, tell the client, Clyde, your code number is 100668. Go there and review your estate plan. By the way, I can go to File, Save As, click in Jones Plan Saturday, noon, save, and now I have a little notice there, and it's also in my computer. So the next time I go down to my computer and open, there I will find the Jones file that I can open, or I can save it in their actual client directory. And then I can also save a screenshot of what I see on the screen at any given time. So I've got a screenshot to remember any page by that just opened. And so that's the married couple module. I think I've covered everything on the married couple module, and I promised you a look at the CLAP. And obviously I could go on for hours. I've got 22 minutes, so I'm pretty happy with what we've covered. Before I go to CLAT, Let me see if there's any further questions. Please tell me, how do I get the EstateView software to play? Sorry, Linda. Let me see here. Does it figure the benefits of the qualified charitable distributions once they turn 70 and a half? I wouldn't say, well, I showed you that, Rob, that it does show, it shows you making charitable contributions beginning when you're 70 and a half, if you wish, or beginning with your minimum distributions. It allows you to show the qualified charitable distributions from your IRA only to the extent of your minimum distributions or to the extent of the entire allowance. Thanks for asking on that. Okay, so now, for those of you still awake, I promised you the CLAT, and I will show you the CLAT. So I go to calculators, and I go to CLAT. And this is the trust that pays income to the surviving spouse. I'm sorry, income to charity, set payments to charity for a term, and then at the end of the CLAT term, it goes to the family. So I'm going to go to Pro Plus here, and I'm going to click to see results. And actually, I was working on a CLAT for a client, so it's still up here. Client's name is not up here, so if you're the client, you'll be happy to know that. By the way, the software is written in Microsoft C# version 8.0, and the software resides on an Amazon cloud server. Your computer uses the software when you reach it on the web. It's not downloaded to your computer, and the Amazon cloud does not see your actual calculations. Only your computer sees your actual calculations. Nevertheless, I like to use clients' initials and not all their names, just in case some Chinese spy finds a way to look at my computer. But otherwise, that's how it works. So I ran a CLAT, as you see across the top, a 20-year CLAT, and it was for a 60-year-old client. Her life expectancy is 23 years, and this one is going to be set up during her lifetime because she would like to get an income tax deduction. And she's going to put 50 million of investments into the CLAT, and we hope they'll grow at 7.5%. And if she gets a level annual payment from the CLAT, then she'll get back, I'm sorry, if the charity gets a level annual payment from the CLAT, the charity will get $3,944,000 a year for 20 years, and then what's left will go to her family. And if the 75/20 rate is at 4.8%, and we know that that is the best rate you can use right now, the program tells us up there on the left in yellow, then the fact that the assets grow at a faster rate gives that CLAT at the end of 20 years a significant amount going to charity. And that amount is shown in the spreadsheet. I'm sorry, that amount not going to charity, that amount going to her family at the end is very significant, 42 million. So that's without any fanciness. And then across the top, we show you here for CLAT number 1, 76% ends up going to charity, 24% goes to the remainder interest. Her income tax savings in year 1, $18 million at the 37% bracket. The present value for her children, $15 million. So It sounds good, but the fact that they have to wait a long time causes that present value to be less than they would have expected. So there's a second kind of CLAT where the payments start low and they increase by 20% a year. In that situation, the income tax deduction is the same, but the percentage going to charity goes down to 67%, and the percentage going to descendants using present value numbers goes to 33%. But then there's another kind called a shark fin CLAT. And the shark fin CLAT, and I can show you let's see the second CLAT that I just showed you, increasing 20% a year. You see the payments start at 542,000, and by year 20 they're at 17 million. But there's a lot more left in the CLAT, and of course you got to take into account probability of death. If she dies during the CLAT term, then the income tax deduction reverses, by the way. And we have a very long webinar on CLATs that we're about to launch for Lineberg Information Services. The third one that I did showed a shark fin CLAT. So with the shark fin CLAT, and the IRS doesn't necessarily like these, but the authorities say they're pretty good. Let's just say that the annuity payments are only $500,000 a year until the very end, and then the 20th payment is $121 million, leaving an in value for descendants of $80 million. That's a better number, isn't it? That's a much better number at the end for the descendants. But what if I use an LLC and we take a discount? So I'll just go to number 4 here, CLAT number 4, which is the same as CLAT number 3, but I'll just put in a discount of, let's say, 20%. I use an LLC, and I transfer the 99% non-voting member interest in the LLC, take a 20% discount. Okay, now my income tax savings are lower for reasons that I could explain, but my descendants now end up with 105 million. Present value to charity and the present value of the remainder is about equal. Now that's with a 20% discount. What if I want to be a little bit more aggressive for number 5 and I use a 30% discount? So there's my discount, there's my 30% discount, and now my income tax deduction, oh, that was I gotta make that non-grantor, the grantor CLAT to get that income tax deduction. Now the tax savings are lower, but the estate tax savings are much higher. I've got 119 million passing estate tax free after the 20 years. So that's why the CLAT is so popular. Now, if you do the CLAT at death, then you don't get the income tax deduction. And the way a lot of our CLATs are drafted is that it says, I hereby leave 1/3 of my residuary trust to each of my children, but the trustee of each of those trusts for my children can elect to disclaim all or part of what the child is receiving to the CLAT. So then the child can sit down with their trustee and say, hey, I don't need this. I'd like it to go to charity. Let's go ahead and disclaim my portion to the CLAT. Then my portion won't be subject to estate tax. And I'll live happily ever after with my charitable foundation that will receive these CLAT payments. So just like that Clayton Q-tip, we want to have flexibility here. We don't want to be bound in particular by not being able to do a CLAT. If one child may want to do a CLAT and another may not, that can be their decision, and you can apportion the estate tax based upon what their decision was. And you do need to be very careful to draft that properly. You could even say that my children, the trustee for my children may disclaim it to the CLAT, And then the trustee of the clat may disclaim it to the charity so the child can decide, going back to this married couple thing down to the bottom, just to show you where I was, we were at whether you're going to give it to charity or the clat down the bottom right hand side, and saving a lot of money from estate tax if you do the clat, or simpler with less going to the descendants if you do the charity. So I have a little bit of time left here. I've got 11 minutes left. So let me show you some other calculators relating to married couples. So I'll go back here. And by the way, if you get kicked out of EstateView, it's no problem. Just go back to it. And when you get back to it, it remembers exactly where you were. So it saves my settings. It knows exactly where I was. And then if I want to start over, I want to start something new, I'll again save as, and I can just say new here or whatever I want. And then when I click File New, now it resets to our standard settings. Okay. So back to the calculators. I want to show you how easy it is to do a charitable remainder unitrust calculation for a married couple. So a charitable remainder unitrust, quite candidly, is mostly used to defer income tax. So I could put $1 million worth of assets, highly appreciated Apple stock, Amazon stock, in a charitable remainder unitrust. The charitable remainder unitrust will pay me 11% of the value of the trust assets every year for 20 years. And then what's left at the end will go to charity. So I put all this appreciated stock in, and the trustee sells it. There's no capital gains tax at the trust level. And then I pay the income tax ratably as I get the money. So if I'm in the 37% tax bracket this year, but I hope to be in a lower tax bracket in a later year, this is a great way to defer the tax, and all the money that would have been paid to taxes sit in that trust and help generate more. So the standard mode, we know the 75/20 rate, 5.2%. You can use the highest of the last three, and that's what you want to do. It automatically selects that. I could go with a 20-year term or a life. I'll go with 20-year term. And then the highest payout rate, 11.44%. I could fill it out for monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually. And then the total value put in, click to see results, and that is going to tell me my charitable remainder is worth $100,000, which is, there's a 10% minimum, and my contribution amount is $1 million, and my expected annual payments, or my annual payments on a unitrust will be 10.870%. Now, the one thing our calculator does that apparently others don't is that we calculate this based upon an initial fiscal year. So I will go to the Pro Plus version here, and that's going to give me a PowerPoint, and that, I mean, a spreadsheet, which is going to show me the short year from today's date, or whatever date I set it, from March 2nd through December 31st. You have to make a pro rata payment, and your last payment is a pro rata short year payment as well. But for a married couple, let's say we don't want to run out of assets in 20 years, payments in 20 years. So I can go down here to the left-hand side, and I can choose lifetime payment, 2 people, ages 64 and 65, using the 2010 table, And I can illustrate to whatever age I want to illustrate, so I can show what happens after the payments end. So I could illustrate for 30 years, and then I can do a 10.4% payout. So this married couple can put $20 million worth of appreciated stock into this trust, and then the trust has no binding obligation to sell the stock at the time it goes in. The trust later sells the stock. There's no capital gains tax until the payments come out. So that's a simple charitable remainder unit trust. But there's another type of charitable remainder unit trust that's not so simple, called a flip NIMCRUT. So I can go to the flip NIMCRUT, and I can click on use flip NIMCRUT. And when I click on use flip NIMCRUT, now it does not have to take the payments in the initial years. I can say, don't take any payments until year 5 or year 6. So now the right to a payment stores up in the flip NIMCRUT, and I'm oversimplifying here, but you could have the payment rights store up in the flip NIMCRUT based upon the percentage amount each year, based upon all the assets in the NIMCRUT, without regard to the fact that it owes you some payments. And then you can flip it and get a big catch-up payment, so you could go and buy hamburgers and mustard and ketchup. So I'm showing in year 25, we sell the asset, no income tax paid. We wait till year 6, and you can figure it out as you go along. But if we show that in year 6, we would get a $525,000 payment, maybe in year 6, I have a net operating loss, or maybe in year 6, I retire. So, and then take the rest of the payments ratably. So that is called the flip NIMCRUT, and it's showing you the year you flip in purple. By the way, on these spreadsheets, as you know, you can click alter detail columns and show more or less things. And you can also show every other line if you want to make it fit. So that is the charitable remainder unit trust. I want to mention, with both skins and private annuities, you can do a joint and survivor skin. So the last skin I was showing you here, I was showing you a one-person skin with a 7.7% interest rate. Well, they don't have to pay estate tax till the second death, so it would make better economic sense, possibly, to use a second to die skin. So I'm going to click duplicate so I can compare these horizontal side by side. And now I can go here to number of lives, 2, a 60-year-old and a 65-year-old and a 60-year-old. And now that interest rate is only 5.6%. So this would be a way to get rid of that red in the installment sale, to have enough of those installment sale notes be self-canceling at 5.6551%. That might be a better strategy. And sometimes the clients want more payments from that installment sale. They go, I like the installment sale, but I'd like to have higher payments. And I drink like a fish and smoke a lot. And then you say, that's good, I've got a solution. Let me put you in a self-canceling installment note, and then just try to drink and smoke more instead of less. And that will be good for the financial health of your family. So you've got skins. You can do the same thing with the private annuity. You can do a second to die qualified personal residence trust. You can do charitable remainder annuity trust instead of a unit trust, which pays you a fixed annual amount each year, a level payment. So if the assets of the charitable remainder trust do poorly, your client's still going to get their payments. So people who aren't as wealthy but really want to help a charity will often do a charitable remainder annuity trust. And then finally, with 1 minute remaining, I can do a life estate transfer. So I can have husband and wife, or two husbands or two wives, age 66 and 50, life expectancy 33 years, and they want to buy a $3 million home, and they want it to be out of their estate when they die. They want to live in it for their lifetime. So I click see results, and what they can do is, for this $3 million home, they can contribute $2,331,000, and a trust for their children that's old and cold can contribute $668,000, and then they can live in the house for their lifetime. They have to maintain it, and then when they die, the house is out of their estate because they only owned a life estate. So that's Jonathan Blockmacher's favorite technique for home ownership. The other thing that I know from this is that if they had a $3 million home and they would like to give the remainder interest in the home to their favorite charity, then they could get a $668,000 income tax deduction and retain the use of the home for their lifetime. Now, how does the number change if they each do one separately? I can go ahead and click duplicate and click to 1, and then you see what it would be for the 66-year-old. It would be certainly a different number for the 66-year-old to do a life estate, and then I can do another one for the 50-year-old to do a life estate. So there you've got it. All right, well, that was my hour. I hope that you got something out of this besides a headache. I really will appreciate any questions, comments, or suggestions that you might have. I'm pleased to report that approximately 83% of you who started ended with me. And I want to thank John for breaking the record for the numbers of comments. Oh, Mike has a good point. Will there be a health desk where a human being will help out with questions and problems? Absolutely. Let me show that to you. I forgot to show that to you, and I apologize for running over, but if you're interested, you're going to go to the left-hand side, and we will have live chat, and my personal assistant, Riley, will be instantly notified beginning April 1st of when you put in your text message. So it's not operational yet. It's working, but we haven't turned it on, so to speak. But there will be live chat, and that live chat will be both for our troubleshooting and for estate planning banter back and forth. Our law firm has 5 tax lawyers. We'll have 7 tax lawyers in June, with 2 new joining us. And between us and our other advisors, Jonathan Blockmacher, Bob Keebler, Jerry Hash, we will have plenty of people helping to make sure this works. We'll also have almost 24-hour coverage because one of our employees in our law firm is a lawyer in the Philippines, graduated from law school in the Philippines, who speaks fluent English, was raised in the United States. So we'll almost have 24-hour coverage for EstateView. Finally, if you want to check out the news, I've got a better way for you to do it. Just click on news there, and then this allows you to choose up to 4 news feeds simultaneously. They can be tax news feeds, or they can be general news feeds, or admiral news feeds. So you can pick whatever you like, and then you can see them simultaneously. And if you prefer to have them summarized, then you can click show summaries, And it actually summarizes these news feeds. It's not us doing it, it's the news feeds themselves summarize this. And look at there. IRS renews focus on targeting high income non-filers. That does not bother me at all to ask high income people who don't file tax returns to please file them. But what will be a challenge is the staffing up of the IRS estate and gift tax audit department. They're definitely staffing that up. So if you're going to make a large gift, I think 2025 or 2024 may be a good year to do it. I don't know whether it's best to wait till 2025 when there'll be a lot more people making large gifts if the exemption is not expected to go up, to stay up. Oh, I did not show you the large gift calculator. Let me go there real quick. Where is it? Large gift calculator also does slats. What I wanted to make sure you see is that when you decide how much your gift is going to be, it will tell you what your net worth will be at age 100 to make sure you don't run out of assets. So as I click the gift up, it's telling me how much I'm saving per million gifted and how much I'll have left at age 100. And you see when I get to 8 million, the incremental savings is 783,000 per million, and at age 100, I'll be at 31 million. When I click to 9 million, now the incremental savings is still 783. Click to 10 million, the incremental savings went to 1,061,000. The reason is I finally used my portability allowance and my core exemption. So now is where I'm really saving, but at age 100, I'll be down to 13 million. Go to 11 million. At age 100, I'll be down to 5 million. Go to 12 million, and oops, I wiped out. And then I can go to timeline, and this actually shows you the situation for gift number 1, and that as I toggle up or toggle down the gift amount, it's showing me what my situation is. And if I display this all the way through age 100, it shows me when I run out of assets based upon the amount of my gift. Now, we do have a Monte Carlo module that will not be ready very soon that will give you a different view of this, but this at least helps you show the client, hey, you don't want to gift too much. You could run out of assets, but it's much more effective if you discount. So it'll show you the impact of discounting, the impact of crummy withdrawal powers, and what happens if you have a surviving spouse as well. So we'll explore that in more detail later. I'm going to sign off now. It's time to take Marcia to lunch on Clearwater Beach, as I promised her. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. I welcome all your questions, comments, and suggestions. Special thanks to the EstateView team. Oh, pricing. Had questions about pricing. I'll go ahead and give you the pricing. I've got the PowerPoint here. Sorry for being a little bit scattered. So there's an FAQ with the EstateView, and then I know we have pricing here. A lot of information, more than you'll ever need. I'll make sure we send this to everybody. But the pricing is, and there's a beta fish. Right now you're a beta user, so there's a beta fish. So the standard $199 a year, which does pretty much everything that the other calculators do, but also provides that horizontal side-by-side comparison. Then the professional version, $399 a year, does everything you just saw, but the automatic letters, pretty much. And then the professional version, $499 a year, does those married couple and single person automatic letters. So we used to take 6 to 8 hours to write one of those letters back in the day. Now you can write that letter, and that's going to help clients significantly. So there's more detail about what each level has, but for now, just use it for free till April 1st. And again, we welcome
all your questions, comments, and suggestions. Thanks, and have a great, great, great day.
Stop.